Quick question, when you tilt in FPS games, do you actually know why? Or do you just feel it hit? Your heart rate spikes, your breathing changes, and suddenly you're playing a completely different game than everyone else. Because most people don't tilt randomly, they tilt over the same kinds of moments over and over. They just don't notice the pattern. And if you don't know what your triggers are, tilt feels uncontrollable. Here's why it matters. Tilt doesn't just mess with your mood, it quietly changes how you think. Your decision making gets rushed, your comms get shorter or sharper, your confidence drops without you even realizing it. And the mistake most people make is trying to control tilt without ever understanding it. They tell themselves to calm down, they try to lock in, they push harder. But you can't even strengthen your mind if you don't know what's actually breaking it. That's why before we talk about how to stop tilt, we need to talk about what it actually is. In this video, I'll show you why tilt isn't random and what's actually happening in your body when it hits. The most common hidden triggers that pull FPS players into frustration without them realizing it, and how simply recognizing your trigger in the moment can stop tilt from hijacking your gameplay before it spirals. Think of tilt like a warning light on your car dashboard. Most people see that light and react emotionally. They either ignore it and keep driving, hoping it just goes away, or they panic and get frustrated that it's even there. But the warning light isn't the problem, it's just information. Tilt works the same way. It's not about your brain saying you're bad or you're weak, it's your system saying something specific just got recognized or hit. And if you don't know what that light means, you keep driving the same way and the engine takes the damage. But once you understand what triggers that light, you stop fearing it, you stop fighting it, and you start using it. That's why understanding your triggers has to come before mental strength. Let's start with one of the most common triggers, getting tilted over something small. I've seen this so many times, missing a jump, whiffing an easy shot, dying in a way that feels stupid or avoidable. The mistake itself isn't big, but the reaction is. And here's the key thing to understand. It's not the mistake that tilts you, it's what the mistake means to you in that moment. A lot of competitive players have high expectations of themselves. So when something simple goes wrong, the thought isn't, okay, information. It's more like, I shouldn't be making mistakes like that, or that was embarrassing, or I'm better than this. Stops being information and turns into an identity hit. I had a mate who got completely tilted one night because he couldn't jump into a window. That was it. No lost gunfight, no throw, just a missed jump. And you could feel his whole mood change. So we paused and we talked about it. Not the jump, but why that moment hit him so hard. And once he understood that, the tilt just lost its grip. His morale came back and he played fine for the rest of the night. Here's the takeaway. When a mistake becomes your mental focus instead of something you move past, it turns into a trigger. Tilt isn't about the error. It's about refusing to let go of it. And it gets even harder when other people are involved. Trigger 2. This one sneaks up on a lot of players. Teammates not doing things your way. You see a teammate making a decision and instantly think, why would you do that? You had a different priority, a different timing, a different idea of what should have happened first, second, or third. And in your head, it feels obvious. But here's the problem. You're assuming everyone is running the same mental priority list as you. When teammates don't do things the way you would have done them, frustration builds fast, not because they're bad players, but because your expectation didn't get met. The frustration quietly turns into judgment. They're throwing, they don't care, they don't know what they're doing. And once you're in that headspace, you stopped adapting to the game. That's actually happening. You're no longer playing the round, you're mentally fighting your own team. Here's the key takeaway. You don't tilt because of your teammates, you tilt because you expected control over something you don't actually have any control over. The moment you notice the expectation, the trigger loses some of its power, and it gets even heavier when you've been losing all night. Trigger number 3, bottled up frustration from losing over and over again. This is where tilt usually explodes. You've been playing for hours, you're doing a lot of things right, your team is playing well, but you just can't finish the job. No wins, or maybe one close game that slips away. What's happening here is important, because tilt really comes from one moment. it builds. Every loss adds a little pressure. Every close round that doesn't go your way stacks frustration in the background. You might not even feel tilted yet, but your system is keeping score. So when something small happens, a bad death, a missed shot, a tiny mistake, it feels way bigger than it should. That's not because that moment was massive, it's because it was the release point. This is why one comment from a teammate suddenly feels unbearable. Why one mistake can ruin your mood. Why tilt feels like it comes out of nowhere. Here's the takeaway. Tilt isn't always about what's happening right now. Sometimes it's delayed frustration finally surfacing. And there's one more trigger that feels personal almost every time. Feedback you already know. This one feels personally for a lot of players. You make a play, you die, and you already know what you did wrong. You've processed it, you're ready to move on. And then a teammate says it. They tell you what you should have done, even though they weren't in the situation. Sometimes they died earlier. Sometimes they didn't see the full picture. But they still feel the need to explain it to you. And it's not always about ego. It's about timing and context. In that moment, feedback doesn't feel helpful. It feels like judgment. Your brain reads it as a threat to competence, especially when you're already under pressure. So instead of absorbing information, your system goes defensive. Your focus shifts away from the game and towards something like protecting yourself. Here's the takeaway. Tilt increases when feedback feels imposed instead of supportive, when it ignores your perspective, and when it lands while you're already emotionally exposed. This is the part most players skip. You can't move forward if you don't acknowledge what's happening in the moment. Tilt doesn't disappear because you tell yourself to relax. It fades when you recognize what has just triggered me, why it affected me, what state am I in right now. Most people don't realize they're tilted. They just play worse, communicate less, blame the game, their teammates, or luck. Awareness interrupts that loop. Once you understand your triggers, you start noticing tilt earlier, you recover faster, and even if you do get pulled into it, you know where you're at, and that alone reduces its power. These aren't the only triggers. Everyone's list is different. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion, it's to understand it, so it doesn't control your decisions. If you have questions, comment below and I would love to help you gain more clarity on this.